Let's bring in now former Labor Advisor Eamonn Fitzpatrick. Eamonn, thanks for your time. This situation in Queensland, a reminder how important it is for federal governments to move and move quickly in the face of a crisis like we're seeing in far north Queensland.
Yeah, absolutely, Kieran. I mean, one of the things, it's a hallmark of living in regional Queensland is, you are constantly subject to the sort of cycle of weather and extreme weather. Seems like more so than ever. Great to see Murray Watt on talking. I mean, he is a Queenslander. He's lived through this both as an advisor at state level and now as the federal minister. But, it's good to see it's an all-hands-on-deck situation up there. We've got the ADF out there now in far north Queensland as well. And what a test for the incoming Premier of Queensland, Stephen Miles. Again, no stranger to any of this. He and Cameron Dick and their team have been through this many times. Looking at the scenes, though, it just reminds me, I think, of the words of my former boss, Anna Bligh, who famously said, we are Queenslanders, we're the people that are bred tough north of the border. And, that is very, very true. It's, the impact on business and on industry and a region really that's struggling to put itself back together in terms of tourism, its biggest offering, and a huge contribution to the national economy as well. So it really is a genuine emergency.
Murray Watt said on this program just a bit earlier that he wants to get there this week to see firsthand the damage. No doubt the Prime Minister will want to do the same. But a reminder of how having an effective communicator and a good minister in a portfolio like that it's important.
And it's never been more important, I think. People really, with the access to so many different channels, long gone away from the day where you'd be huddled around hoping your transistor would pick up an emergency broadcast. People are plugged in constantly and they need the latest information because the only way you can absolutely protect people, keep communities safe, is to get them as far in front of that weather curve as possible. We're lucky today. I think even in the last 10 years, we're in a much better spot. And, there is a degree of planning and anticipation that's never previously existed. Having said that, extreme weather moves quick and moves fast. And, woe betide anyone who takes weather for granted or who just takes that as something that we can get on top of easily. I mean, it can truly be hugely devastating, particularly in regions, just wrecks entire economies.
We have had a flurry of polls to finish the year, Eamonn. It's meant to slow down, but the polling hasn't. We've seen things like the drop in the blue-collar vote for Labor out of the Redbridge polling, which was in the Sunday Telegraph. Today, the AFR poll and then the news poll with slightly different trend developments. What's your overall read, if you put everything together, where the government is as we wrap up 2023?
Yeah, it's no room for complacency, time to get back on the front foot. I got to say, it is an absolute testament to the performance of Anthony Albanese, Jim Chalmers and their entire team that they got relatively far into the term with scarcely a bump. That's pretty remarkable. You always do get a slowing down, a slump, a bit of a reversal when you get midterm. That is pretty natural, but they had it good for so long. I suspect this sort of feels a bit more than it would ordinarily. And they don't have the biggest of margins, so that'll be front and centre. For Labor going into the next year. It is that sort of year-long run-up to the next campaign. It's got to be the economy. The message is the economy, making sure people are doing as good as they possibly can be, making sure that where there is an emerging sort of two-track economy, some people who are doing fine or okay, and a lot of people are really feeling the pain, nobody gets left behind. And there's been some encouraging signs. I think Jim Chalmers is a man who, he does not get complacent about anything. I know him well. And nor does the Prime Minister, but that'll definitely be their focus. I think on the other foot, though, I think for the opposition, I'm not sure there's much comfort. I mean, Peter Dutton's done an okay job, I think, but really, he still also has a mountain to climb. And I think if I was in the opposition thinking that Labor were in trouble, I wouldn't quite be doing that just yet. They still do have that challenge of trying to regain some of those teal seats as well. And I think that's
there is a huge challenge on that front.
Than it is, I think.
Let's bring in now Liberal strategist, a former strategist to Prime Minister Scott Morrison, Yaron Finkelstein. Yaron, as Eamonn, I think, was rightly saying there's still a big ask for the coalition, but there would be a sense of they'd be buoyed by what they've seen in recent weeks. I think the opposition leader, for one, has definitely, off the back of the referendum and through those months, has found his line and length as leader of the coalition you're on.
I think that's very true. Eamonn's obviously in the Christmas spirit has been very kind to Labor in regards to his observations. I think broadly the main point is that we're only 18 months in, another 17 months before the term formally expires, so there's plenty of time to steady the ship. But from the opposition's perspective, it is, as you know, a united team, and that's quite extraordinary. First 18 months after having lost an election, and normally very challenging times for an opposition. So he's kept them together, he's got purpose, and these numbers will change. It's just another poll that we see today, but nonetheless, it would give them some sense of mission, and that's critically important for an opposition to have that focus at this point.
There are some points of difference, not just, say, on the economy, where there's always an argument, but on foreign policy and say, the reaction to that call for a ceasefire at the United Nations, the ceasefire in Gaza. Yaron, how is this playing out, both at a political level, but on the ground? And I spoke to Walt from AJAC earlier. He's saying that really the feeling is uncertainty in the Australian Jewish community, that anti-Semitism, worryingly, is at a record high, Ron.
It is, by all official accounts, there is a significant increase. But anti-Semitism, it's almost a euphemism. It's essentially anti-Jewish hatred, and it has been inspired and triggered by the events we see overseas. But broadly, Australians don't like the sense of unsettled conflict, both internationally and also domestically. The sense of social cohesion is really, really important to Australians. So I think the vast majority of Australians don't like seeing what we're seeing with regards to this spike of anti-Semitism, as Australians like to get along. So as concerning as it is, I think that it is not something that the majority of Australians are keen to see continue, and therefore we do need some leadership from the government to, at every opportunity, shut down the oxygen that anti-Semitism requires to flourish.
Yep, 100%. And Eamon, it is a challenge because while we say the economy is the fundamental political challenge, security of everyone, and certainly this feeds into that issue, is one of those fundamental things that a federal government's got to get right, Eamon.
Yeah, and I think there actually have been quite a few steps, not just recently, but right along the way. I think by and large, most Australian government, state and federal, do agree. And, there have been really worrying signs in recent years. You see all sorts of anti-Jewish activity cropping up in a society like ours, where, one, there's no excuse for it. It shouldn't be happening in the first place. And two, how can anyone even tolerate it? Whether it's someone flying, people flying Nazi flags, things like that, just absolutely outrageous. It's like people have forgotten about what happened in World War II. Really, whether it's a reminder of that or just the ongoing shocking behaviour that people in our community have to suffer just because they're going about their business. As Walt Secord said, kids going to school are now being targeted, being yelled at from cars.
Crazy.
Really, the people behind this stuff need to wake up to themselves. And our governments do have to be united, always, in their condemnation and move swiftly and send those right signals.
Yeah, well, we hope that continues. We see a brighter path for all Australians, Jewish Australians, very much included in that. Eamonn Fitzpatrick, Yaron Finkelstein, gents, we'll talk to you soon.